Coal in the stocking ought not to be what we leave for the American people at the end of this year. We're going to have some 3 million people who are going to be without ability to support themselves and their families if we don't pass the unemployment insurance and do it in the next few days. An awful lot of people are going to face, working men and women, average salaried people, are going to find their salaries, their take-home pay reduced if we do not extend and follow the President's recommendation for both individuals and small businesses. So that I am hopeful that, unlike what happened in the Senate, where a majority of the United States Senate voted to extend the payroll tax, the Republicans offered an alternative, and as the leader has pointed out, couldn't get a majority of their own party to support their recommendation. But at least it did recognize that we ought to extend the payroll tax. So I am very hopeful that the Republican leadership, both in the House and the Senate, will work with us to ensure that coal is not the gift from the United States Congress in the stockings of the American people, that we pass an extension of the tax cut and indeed expand that tax cut, which economists, as the leaders pointed out, will have a very substantially positive effect on jobs and growth in the economy, and pass the unemployment insurance as well, so that we do not have millions of people, millions of our fellow citizens, without the ability to put food on their table in the coming year. Thank you.
It's important to note that although a majority voted in the Senate for extending the payroll tax cut, you still need 60 votes in the Senate, and that majority did not make a successful passage of the process to move the legislation along. And then when they had their own plan, as the whip said, a majority of the Republicans voted against their own plan. What is it that the middle class did to the Republicans that they are taking it out on them so harshly in not passing this payroll tax and saying we're protecting the tax cut for the wealthy, but we're not protecting extending the tax cut for the middle class? Any questions?
The
yes.
Republicans said they want to pave the way for the Keystone Pipeline, auction off some spectrum, and ease environmental regulation as part of the package to extend payroll tax cut and unemployment insurance. What do you reaction to that?
I think that they're just, this is evasive. You know, they're taking a circuitous route to nowhere. And the fact is, we know what we have to do. We can, if we have to pay for the payroll tax cut, and we're perfectly willing to do that, even though the Republicans never want to pay for the tax cut for the wealthiest people in our country. Doesn't that strike you as funny? For the middle income tax cut, it has to be paid for. Tax cuts for the wealthy, we don't pay for that. But in any event, we're willing to be fiscally sound in terms of saying we want to extend this. We have confidence it will create jobs. It will bring revenue to the Treasury. And we can pay for the payroll tax cut, and we can pay for the extension of SGR, which is very important to America's seniors, by doing what the Republicans did in their budget, by taking the funds from the overseas contingency operations account.
Madam Leader, do you have enough leverage to insist on the tax on income over $1 million being part of the package, or are you really focused on OCO or some other kind of offset?
Well, I think, you know, time is of the essence, and Mr. Hoyer may have a few on this as well.
Leverage is not the issue. Votes are the issue. Your question is, do we have the votes? Certainly, you saw in the United States Senate, a majority of the members of the United States Senate. Unfortunately, the Senate requires a supermajority to do anything. To put a bill on the floor requires 60 votes. The American public doesn't understand that. I don't understand it, very frankly. I think it's a dysfunctional body that has a majority of the representatives, as a matter of fact, well over a majority of the American public voting for the passage of that bill, and it still doesn't pass, notwithstanding the fact it gets 51. So we're going to continue to advocate on behalf of working Americans to get this, make sure their tax cut that was affected last year is extended and expanded so that we can continue to grow the economy, grow jobs, and create those 400,000 jobs that the economists believe will result.
Could you talk a little bit about the potential for using OCO money?
Well, that has been something that Republicans have used in their budgeting, so I think if there's anything that's important, it is the economic security of America's families, and we could use it for extending the payroll tax and removing all the uncertainty in SGR. SGR is initials for something that means that seniors will be able to see the doctor of their choice under Medicare. It's very important to our seniors, and it is a priority. And this money, this account has over $1 trillion in it. It wouldn't take half of it to cover what we're talking about.
And Mr. Hoyer, you feel like yesterday's Senate vote was only a message about the millionaire's tax, did not say that the Senate doesn't have an appetite to expand the payroll tax cut rather than hold it static at 4.2. You think the Senate still has an appetite to expand it?
I don't know the answer to that question if you're talking about 60, because I don't think that reflected that vote. But I think that the majority of the United States Senate indicated they had that appetite. Whether we have 60 or not, I don't know. But what the president has said is we've got an economy that is struggling, although we had some good news today. Unemployment rate went from 9 down to 8.6. We added 140,000 private sector jobs. Unfortunately, we continue to lose public sector jobs, about 20,000. So we had a net 120,000 appreciation of jobs. But the answer to your question is economists tell us if we do what the president suggests, we're going to expand the economy and grow jobs. And that's what the American people want us to do.
Pelosi, this morning there seemed to be a lot of disarray in the Republican conference about whether or not to support the payroll tax extension. So it seems that anything that would extend it is going to need Democratic support in the House. Do you guys feel you have the leverage, and are you willing to negotiate anything in terms of spending cuts that you would ordinarily be opposed to?
Well, let me just say I'm not an expert on disarray on the Republican caucus, but I do know that the Democrats put the heat on passing the payroll tax cut, and that disarray may be a result of them feeling the heat. The American people know that this is about fairness. It's urgent for us to pass this, and again, jobs are at stake, and the purchasing power of our the middle class during this holiday season, which is important to our economy, depends on this. We're always willing to talk about some offsets when it comes to this, but OCO is a perfect place to go because with the winding down of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan too, there are these resources. They will be used for something, and we're saying they should be used as a priority to give a tax cut to the middle class and other issues that are of concern to the middle class. But we're always open to hear what they have to say. So far, we haven't heard anything that even sounds like a serious attempt at a bipartisan compromise.
Let me say to that, talk is cheap. When President Bush said the country was in trouble, Democrats responded in a bipartisan way. When the Republicans couldn't keep government running without our help, they got our help. The second time they couldn't keep government running without our help, we gave them the help. They couldn't make sure that America paid its debts, paid its bills. Democrats helped. So the answer to your question is, yes, Democrats have shown, not just talked about it, have shown that we are prepared, as we did just recently when the Republicans couldn't pass their own appropriation bills. The Republicans' appropriation bill that came out of their committee with the support of their chairman of the Appropriations Committee. 101 of their folks voted against. They only got 131. You need 218. They have more than 218. When historically, frankly, when Speaker Pelosi was putting legislation that was needed by the American public, too often we got zero support. So the answer to your question is an emphatic yes. We are prepared to cooperate on behalf of the welfare of our country and of our people.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
We cannot